That Was Yesterday podcast is brought to you by Define Mind and Body Wellness, my wellness center here in Glastonbury, Connecticut, where we specialize in holistic services to help shortcut the process so that you can see results fast, but learn to do it in a habitual way. So many of the topics we talk about are part of the program that our clients receive, except they get much more in-depth detail. Also, my workbook of the 10-week program to lose and never look back, which is only available to our patients at Define. If you are interested in holistic body fat spot reduction, or our pod to increase your metabolism, or our cold plunge, or our sauna, which is the best sauna in the world, that I promise you. I know that sounds biased, but you'll see for yourself. Please go to definewellnesscenter.com. You will be prompted to put your information in, and make sure to mention podcast when you do, as you will be eligible for a bigger discount on our introductory services because you are a listener. Appreciate you. Have a great day and enjoy today's podcast. All right, Joe. Good morning. Good morning. So we'll set the stage here. We got Mr. Joe Zone, legendary media man of many years. And we're doing our 3-week sort of progress check-in. So he's on a 12-week program with Define. He's doing the spot reduction. He's doing the metabolic boost pod. And he is also doing coaching, where we're designing workouts for him and eating plan and adjusting as we go. So, Joe, before we get into all this stuff, I got a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
So, one of the first things you told me when we started, I said to you, how much time do you have to work out in the morning?
Right.
What did you tell me?
An hour.
An hour.
Yep.
Then I don't hear, we're doing a weekly check-in. Well, we should be doing a weekly check-in. We'll go over some of that today. Where you're supposed to communicate issues, struggles, all that good stuff. I don't hear anything about workouts being too long. Then he waits till we go on to WFSB, Great Day, Connecticut. For the first time for me to hear, he's not having the time to do the hour workouts. What's up with that, Joe?
Well, as I second guessed it, there really aren't too long. They're actually a good time for me. I just found maybe what made them too long was if you're interrupted and you got to stop and you take 10 minutes because you got to take a phone call or you got to go do an errand or something, that makes it longer. But as I did 3 straight days in a row, I found that I can do them. And the hour works for me. So they're not too long anymore. And also what helps is as you do them more and more, you don't have to watch the videos all the time to slow down to see how to do them. Now, when I see what the exercise is and I see the first picture of the video, I know how to do them. So I'm saving, a minute there, 2 minutes there. So they're not too long. Maybe last week they felt too long because I wasn't able to do 3-4 straight days. Now that I've done 3 straight, today will be the 4th straight, I can get into a flow. I realize how the whole thing works.
Well, yeah, and I'm obviously joking here, but that is one thing, right? Like that's one thing, with you and then with everybody, where like the most, I think what's really important for people to hear is that, because I think there's a perception for people when they see somebody seeing change and no matter what their journey is, they look across and on social media or they see somebody in person, they're like, man, they're killing it, and the person is you're doing really good, you look great. And so like that can be true, but I think what often gets lost is that struggle. It's like there is no one plan that we're just going to start or you're going to start, whether it's it doesn't matter. There's no plan that exists in the world for you, Joe, or for anybody else in the world where you just started and it's going to work perfectly. And so I think it's really important for people to understand is that like there are going to be adjustments because you're going to have expectations that don't fit reality, right? And sometimes, from a coach perspective, you don't know the outcomes. And in your perspective, like from your situation, Joe, we're trying to program in something to do 2 things, to help you get leaner, but also to do some corrective exercise to reduce pain, increase range of motion and some of that stuff. And with that, as we originally talked about, sometimes it's 1 foot forward, 2 steps back to find out what are your limits, what are the exercises you can do, what you can't do. So we want to throw a lot of stuff out there. But I think the takeaway here for people listening is that expect it to be messy. And the most important thing in particular, this is what the power of working with the coaches is that if and when that does happen, don't internalize, not that Joe has done this, but a lot of people tend to internalize the struggle as it's their own and their mistake and it's them, it's their life. And it's not that. It's just that you need to make an adjustment. And as long as you can have that attitude, there's no reason why you can never stop. And so that being said, I will say that is ultimately my fault, because when I hear an hour, I should always underestimate that. And even with what you just said, I'm going to go in and make a few tweaks to sort of, maybe make it about 10 minutes less, just so that if you do get those interruptions, we can accommodate that. And if you don't, you can keep going.
Well, I'll say this, to your point about the coaching aspect. Every time I do one of these, I say, that's exactly what I need for that particular part of my body. So you found, we only worked together, 40 minutes the first time, where you were trying to figure out what I needed and where. And I'll say this, there may be some other ones you'll add, but the ones I'm doing are working in exactly the spots where I need them to work. I can feel, the bicep, that right on that, rolling that back and forth, the crossball roll, behind my back there, stretching the legs, all of those. I'm saying to myself, man, he really knew exactly what exercises I needed. And there may be others. I would say the one thing about doing them, I hate the second time through. So where it says repeat. So a couple of them are, you do 7 or 8, and then it says go again. And in my mind, I'm saying, I'm not going again. I'm going on to the next group of 5.
And why is that, do you think? Is that like difficulty or boredom, or what do you think?
No, because I know now going again takes more time. So I'm trying to get all of them in a certain time, rather than, because, the first set takes you, say, 10 minutes, and you do them again, that's another 10 minutes. And I'm just using an example. And not all of them are repeat, but there's a couple of series where you do 6 or 7 or 8, and then it says repeat. I hate repeat.
And that is something I think across the board people do hate. And this is where it's tough, right? Because I understand from a client perspective, like when I had my gyms melt, like we used to program Monday through Saturday differently, but then those workouts Monday through Saturday would remain the same for, I forget what it was now, but anywhere from like 3 to 6 weeks. But there is a reason behind that, because as you said, you've got to learn the exercise. And once you learn them, you get more comfortable with them. There is a learning process. And that's especially when you're working out remotely, you got to understand what you're doing. Otherwise there's no point, because we don't want to get you hurt. But there's also a component of like, when we're talking about range of motion, like in particular, like, getting you to go overhead and all of that, that takes time to open up those joints, and so you do need repetition. But let me ask you this, so we can kind of look at where we can condense it. Are there any exercises, and I can even pull it up on the screen, are there any exercises that you feel like, you just don't feel much, or alternatively, you actually feel like sharp pain and you avoid? So like anything that you feel like, hey, what is the point of this? Or on the other end of things, it's like so hard where it just doesn't, it actually hurts.
There are a couple where it says do a minute, and at 45, I just, I can't go any longer. And I'm trying to think of some of the ones, but for the most part, I love, they're so varied between, whether you're doing ankles or wrists or, shoulders or legs. My legs are really, really tight. That's a hard one. I told you I can't reach my ankle to pull it back.
Yeah.
So I have to, I use the back of my pant leg to get that one done, but I can feel where the stretch is, on the thigh and all that. So, and then I think of the other one, the lacrosse ball. I can do it on the floor, but I have a harder time doing it the way it specifically says. And I actually think you made a note that says just, get down on the floor and roll that on your lower back. But the rest of them I can do. There's that stretch with the band still on that right shoulder. That's still a struggle, but I can feel it. I can do it a little bit longer than I could the first time we tried it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about like why. So to a little backstory for those listening is that when I program Joe's stuff, I'm not programming reps, I'm programming duration, because that allows them to focus on the form, but it also allows, like, as you're going through it, like you said, like going for the entire, and because like the duration is set to what we want to get, to what we want to get out of it. And when we're working with tissue work and corrective exercise, like the law, you need a decent amount of reps or time under tension to kind of open things up. But that being said, one of the things that Joe's experiencing is that when you are working certain areas, particularly weaknesses and limited areas, that it's gonna feel like that. You're gonna feel fatigue. And so I'm okay with like listening to your body when like, okay, like enough's enough. Say if it's a 60-second set after 45 seconds in this way is like, oh gosh, like let's just say it was let's say it's a 60-second set, and after 30 seconds, you're like, oh gosh, I got to just take a break. So just sort of like drop your arms or just relax, release tension, take a few seconds off, take a few breaths, and then kind of go back at it, because
go back to it.
Going back at it actually is going to be really good for your range of motion. And really what it's ultimately going to do is build endurance in that exercise, which is going to do all the things that we want. If you have better endurance to be able to do something longer, that would mean you have more range of motion, you have more strength, you have more stability.
Well, I love the variety, first of all. And most of the exercises are a minute. There's only a few that are 2 minutes at a time. So it goes by pretty quick. And I've got, the timer on my watch, and I time it out. But I do like the variety because I'm hitting body parts that I know are a problem, and I would never have any idea how to approach them.
Is there anything that that you feel like, so the ones you just said, is there anything like that? What you're saying there makes sense. And that's a good indicator when you say you have a hard time getting your ankle to do the stretch. Like, that information is helpful for me, because that can help me understand, okay, well, if he's having a hard time grabbing his ankle in that perspective for a sideline quad stretch,
yes,
well, that's gonna speak to, all right, those quads are just super, super tight, right? So we got to work on that area a little bit more.
Yep. There's one more that just came to mind. The butt to the wall, that one that you're pulling your hamstring up the wall. I can't quite get my butt to the wall. I like that. I can really feel that stretch, but I'm not quite flat up against the wall with my butt. But that's a good one. I do appreciate that one.
Yeah, what Joe's talking about is an ankle mobility exercise, which Joe didn't come to me with ankle issues, but he did say he had knee issues. And generally speaking, almost always when there's a knee issue, there's an ankle tightness or weakness or something there. So that's why we're not just responding locally, we're trying to respond overall. Okay, so before we move on from the workouts, I am going to adjust, like I said, the duration, just because even though you've been getting in the last few days, we always want to plan for like not perfect situation, but like what we know we can get done, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would the duration be that you even if you get interrupted, you can at least bang out? Like, would it be 30 minutes? Like, what would it be?
No, I can do 45 minutes. I can, get through yours, because I do like to have that last 15 minutes for a little cardio work. So I'm still doing an hour, but I was doing more like an hour 15. But no, 45 is good. I like the variation. I like the amount of time that each one costs, but you got to do it. You have to be disciplined. And I will tell you that after going 3 straight days in a row, exactly as it's proposed, last night or yesterday, I had the least amount of pain in all areas of my body. And
Awesome.
last night I slept 7 hours and didn't get up until 5 a.m. for my first bathroom break. So I don't know if that's connected, but that was really, really a good day yesterday.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that does make sense, right? Like that, but that is the time under, like, again, that duration is all there for a reason. Yep. Because and just to be, for those people listening at home, the duration of the workouts doesn't speak to intensity, and that's an important thing to delineate here, because one of the mistakes a lot of people will make when they're getting back into a workout routine is that they think more is better, longer is better. That's not the case with Joe. Like, that's not why he has a 45, 60-minute workout. If Joe didn't have the amount of pain and, sort of chronic issues originally, we wouldn't have, I honestly wouldn't program a workout that long. Like if Joe came without any of those, maybe Joe, when he was, 10 years ago, whatever, because that was part of the issue we started, is that at this point in his life, he's 70, he's been active for so many years, he started to accumulate pain that was, pretty chronic. But if that wasn't the case, Joe, your workouts actually would be like 20 minutes. Because that really is all you need when you're doing the right stuff. But because there are these other elements, we're doing a lot of what Joe is doing is corrective exercise, tissue work, stretching, because we're trying to get him back to pain-free, right? Or as close to it as possible. So to make sure everybody understands at home is that is why his workouts are longer. And even if you don't have that much time to allocate, that's okay, because something more than nothing is progress. So it's really just finding what's going to work for you. But all right, cool. That's great to hear, Joe. Let's talk a little bit about sleep, because one of the things that we did for Joe was originally, when he was coming into this, he was having some issues. He would wake up in the morning in pain, and in the night, because of some of the issues pain wise that he has, he would stagger pillows here there to kind of accommodate his body. So two of the things that we suggested was, one, getting a pregnancy pillow to help like confine him, and number two, getting a weighted blanket to, once again, kind of prevent movement, but to stop him from like moving pillows at certain areas like he was doing prior. So Joe, walk us through a little bit about how that's been going and what you're doing each night now.
So I've removed those little pillows, and I've got a weighted blanket that is phenomenal. I don't know. I mean, it's heavy. I don't know what the pounds are, but that thing,
30-40 pounds.
I get under that, wrap it around me, and I'm definitely moving less at night, and I'm definitely sleeping better, and I'm also waking up with less pain. I still have, because you're drinking so much water on this, and I'm trying to stop drinking water by, 6:30, 7 o'clock. You're still drinking a lot of water. So I'm still getting up for bathroom breaks, but I am waking up with less pain, and I'm positive that's because I'm not moving around as much. And plus, I've also doing the workouts. I'm having less pain anyway. But I think that weighted blanket, I've got to tell you, I love that thing.
Good. That's really good to hear. Yeah, I mean, the less pain, I would say it's a combination of both. Like, one of the things that happens when you're moving pillows in certain areas, because you're asleep, your body's, you can really cause damage, because you're manipulating your body in ways and then moving, and then that can put more pressure in certain areas, and then that takes away from your sleep, which then takes away from your recovery, which then creates more pain. So I do think it's a combination of all things there, which is really important, because another thing that I hear a lot is they'll, side sleep or stomach sleep, which I get if that's comfortable for you. It's never been comfortable for me, thankfully.
No.
But the end of the day is that I don't care what your body type is and whatever else, you're putting yourself at risk when you're side sleeping and on your stomach sleeping for injuries. So whatever you can do to sleep on your back, it would be recommended.
And I do sleep on my back, by the way.
Good. So I'm just going to kind of look at overall some patterns with your check-ins here. I mean, the sleep's been pretty consistently good, which is great. The only things really interfering to sleep is the bathroom break. So Joe, what time are you going to bed?
When I'm not doing the 11 o'clock news, I'm usually asleep by 10, and I get up at 7. That's solid.
That's real solid. And you're stopping and drinking the water at 6. Now, what would you say, like, at what point, like, when you stop drinking your water, what's the quantity of water you have at that time?
Well, I'm trying to follow your routine where, it's an ounce, but half of your body weight in ounces. So I get close to that, but I'm drinking all day, and then sometimes I get, like I'm at work, I get hungry. So instead of eating office, I'm having the greens with water. So I'm drinking, when I say lots, I'm drinking basically the prescribed amount. So in my case, it's like 95 to 100 ounces of water. like that blue cup you've got there, I'll try to have 5 of those during the day.
To be more specific, my question is like, the last time you're having water, right?
Yep.
Is it one of these, or like what's the size of the amount of water you're having at that 6 o'clock time when you're cutting it off?
Well, actually, it's my nighttime meds. So, before I go to bed, I have, a cup to, just take my medication. The last big full thing I'm sipping at work is one of those cups, sipping throughout. I don't drink it all at once. I drink it over, a few hours.
Because another thing that we can kind of do here is just further manipulate your water intake. So obviously Joe has a varying schedule depending on when he's on, when he's on TV and stuff like that. So he has sometimes these later nights and sometimes, more normal hours. But what I would say is one other thing we can do, another lever we can pull, 2 things would be, one is, let's just say a typical day, you're going to stop your water intake at 6.
Yep.
Then on that day, to really aim to hit like 95% of the water intake by 4. So like, say if you're having dinner, you're just taking sips. You're not drinking like you normally would. You're just taking sips to help your food wash down, just to give your body more time to process the water out.
Okay, that's easy to do.
And then the other thing that we have with his water intake is eating half your body or drinking half your body weight of ounces of water per day, which if you're talking about a protein powder and water or super greens and water, I would count those towards your water intake as well. We're not calling coffee or anything else, but things like just, a supplement in water is okay. So, and then just take the minimal, I'm sure you're probably already doing this, but just take the minimal amount you need with your medicine to get it down. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about, the changes that you're feeling so far. We talked a little bit about less pain, better sleep. What else have you noticed?
Well, I definitely have more flexibility. The other thing is, you're more confident when you put a jacket on or slacks on that you couldn't put on a month ago, and now you can button them. That's important. This is not a lose weight fast, program. We're going ounces at a time, a pound a week, maybe sometimes.
That's right.
But I would say this, I would give anything in this program if I could give up that dumb almond milk I have to put in my coffee and be able to put that half and half in when I have my first cup right after I drink my 10 ounces of water. It's not the same. I'm still trying to have you convince me why that one little half and half container is going to destroy my entire program.
Well, so there's a lot of good stuff there. So all right. So yeah, and it's great to hear, the confidence, the clothes fitting better, and it's been under a month. So that's huge. And there's a certain dichotomy there that I want to focus in on, is that he said the weight loss.
Right.
So we're talking about pounds on the scale is slower, right? Yep. But what did he also say? Feeling more confident, clothes fitting better, right? Which has to be the focus. I hope, one of the things I'm going to stand on a soapbox and scream, as I've been doing for my career thus far, but I'm going to continue to do so as much as I can, is trying to help people get off of the focus on weight loss, which I know Joe is not focused on, but it is important for us to stop there for a moment, because that is one thing that derails people. They'll feel better. They feel less pain. They have more energy. They're moving better. They're moving more. And yet they're like, but I'm not losing as much weight, which when I hear that as a coach, it just makes me want to take a brick and hit it on my head multiple times.
And then hit me with
it. Yeah, exactly. But it's just important to understand, like, I don't necessarily blame people for that. But you have to understand, when you do feel that way, that's not a reality that you're speaking towards clearly. That is a perception of reality, which is driven by self-sabotage. And self-sabotage will always find a way to find a reason why you have to stop. And so in that case, like, I'm getting all these benefits, but I'm losing weight. If you find yourself saying that, no matter what program you're in, you've got to slow down, stop, good time to take a pen and paper out and journal why you're feeling that way and what is it that you actually want? Because I promise you, it's nothing more than self-sabotage. And look, you're an adult. You can choose to focus on your weight all you want. But particularly for women in menopause and beyond, I'll tell you this. If you want to continue to focus on your scale number, I don't care what program you're in. I don't care if you cut your calories. I don't care if you take a GL1P, whatever it is. If you want to focus on your weight, just know that's going to be as reasonable as you going outside right now. Is the time we record this, January 26th, and there's mountains of snow out there. The equivalent of focusing on your weight is going outside and screaming at the sky, I want sun, and I want no snow, because you can do that, but you're going to drive yourself freaking crazy because you have ultimately no control over it. So that being said, Joe, I do want to get into, your composition, because we didn't have time to really talk through that as much on the segment. But before we just looking at some of the other stuff in your check-ins right now. Sorry. I just completely skipped past a very important thing you said, which was the half and half. So it's like 20 calories. It's one little thing. And so here's the reason why we took it out. Number one is because those half and halves, they're like, zero sugar, 20 calories. Like on paper, it's like, well, that's not bad. What is that? It's nothing. So the reason why we took it out though, is because that's artificial sweeteners that likely the body's not going to process out, which will then create it will remain ultimately over time in the system, accumulate as bacteria in your gut, which can lead to gut issues. If it's minimal, it might not. Now, Joe doesn't have any existing gut issues, so he's less susceptible to that. But people who do have existing gut issues, that little bit will worsen it. And when you have that bacteria that's not getting processed in your gut, it creates cellular inflammation, but it also can create, cravings like outside of your coffee. But that being said, I like to coach through the lens of being practical and looking through like good, better, and best. So better is oat milk in coffee instead of the half and half. Best would be without it and just use something like stevia. That being said, what Joe said is powerful, which is if I could just do, and if that is the case, when I hear that, what I really hear is like at some point I'm going to crack. And sometimes when you crack on one little small thing, you crack with everything else. So let's do this, Joe. Let's add it back in. All right.
You're my hero this morning.
So, but we got to just know, like, if you notice anything in your stomach change or anything, and again, he doesn't have pre-existing gut issues. So like, then let's give it a shot, again, correct monitor from there.
I have Joe, one cup of coffee a day, and that's it. So that's all we're going to intake, just so you know the amount.
Yeah. But the thing is like, there's this movement against like I feel like a lot of times clients will have to say it like that to me. It's like, oh, I have coffee, as if it's a bad thing. It's like, look, anything you overdo is bad, but at the end of the day, coffee by itself isn't bad. What causes a lot of issues for people is what you're putting in it, and also not having enough water, and therefore, well, not just therefore, but that in part leads to higher acidity in the gut, which causes issues. But coffee by itself is not a problem. In fact, I was just working with a client of mine back from the gyms she came back. I'm helping her with some gut issues. She's like amazed that her gut issues are basically gone and she's still having her coffee. It's like, well, you can have both. It's just the way you have to, like, it's just, again, there has to be a plan around it. So that being said, Joey, walk us through what an average day of eating's been like for you, and then talk a little about like how you're having your pastas and pizza still and what that looks like.
So I thought that the fast of 16 hours would be challenging. It's actually not challenging at all, because after my last meal is like is 6:30 at night. Like if I go out on like Saturday night, we had friends in, we went out, and I didn't eat till 8:30. So I just backed up to 16 hours. So I can do the 16 hours. And I thought that breakfast would be an issue, or missing breakfast would be an issue, but it's not, because, you start with the water, that 1 cup of coffee, then I go to the greens, then I work out, then I have the protein mix, And by that time, it's, 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then as soon as I hit the 16-hour mark, though, boom, I'm either having soup or sandwich, or I'm having one of those rotisserie chickens. I try to have one of those rotisserie chicken breasts every day. I have a favorite restaurant in Rocky Hill West Side where they make me this fabulous Joe's Own salad, which has grilled chicken on it. And I have that literally 4 straight days at noon. Then I don't eat again until supper. Sometimes it's pasta, sometimes it's pizza. The other night it was salmon. Sometimes it's a hamburger. And that's pretty much what I do every single day. I'm eating sometimes 3 times a day, but most of the time, twice a day. And I don't have anything after 6:30 or after my last meal, whenever. And most of the time that's 6:30.
And Joe, what type of, or let me ask you, how often would you say you are because we'll talk about that in a second, but how often are you having carbohydrates at this point?
I would say out of the 7 days a week, I'm having it 4 days a week.
Okay. And then on those days, it's just dinner?
Right, correct. Just dinner. It's either pasta. I had pizza yesterday and it was phenomenal. The one thing I do is I don't waste my carbs. My carbs are the things I want to eat, which is pizza or pasta.
Yeah, and that's something that Joe made. And that's something Joe made clear. And yeah, that's an important comment there, Joe, because that's something he said early on. I asked him, Joe, what's your non-negotiable? And he said, well, I don't want to cut out pizza. I want to cut out pasta. And Joe's done a lot of programs in the past. It saw great results. But one of the things that he had said was, some programs were just a little bit more restrictive where he had to cut it out completely. And there are issues in that. Like, it's one thing if you're heading towards a very specific goal in a specific timeline, and you have a specific plan to follow after. Like, that's a different story. But when you're just following a plan that's cutting out all the things you love, and that's just your plan in general indefinitely, that's never going to work out for you, because as soon as you start adding that stuff back in, you're screwed. Yep. So we made it clear, like I told Joe, an important part of our program is carb rotating. And so the idea of carb rotating is you're not having it every day, but you're not cutting it out completely either. So the thing with carb rotating is that you have to, like, your behaviors have to match your expectations. In other words, Joe's not complaining about this, but one could say, well, I would like to have seen better results at this point. And in so saying that, my response as a coach would be, okay, so let's go from 4 carbs to 2 carbs a week, right? But that's not what we're trying to do here. And ultimately, you have to find the right cadence of, like, I want an allowance, but also seeing results that you feel comfortable with. And as long as those two things are aligned, then you're golden, So with that though, I would say one of the things, so we didn't get a chance to talk about this because there's just way too much context. And when we're on TV, we film this live, when we do the segments, and, you get 5 minutes, there's 4 people talking, you want to make sure you can't talk about many different things. So let me just pull up Joe's. So we do our 3-dimensional imaging scale at Define. And so that gives us, circumferences lost, weight, body fat, all the stuff. So Joe's down. So and this is another important thing about weight, everybody, is that Joe's only, you can't see me, I'm using quote air quotes, he's only down 3.2 pounds. However, Joe, guess how much fat pounds you're down? Guess.
5 pounds.
9.1 pounds.
Fat pounds.
Wow. 9.1 pounds of fat.
That's the stuff you're trying to get rid of.
That's right. Wow. And Joe, guess how much muscle you gained?
Well, I think you did tell me it was 4%, something like that.
In terms of pounds, though, you gained 5.9 pounds of of muscle.
And just to follow that up, which is amazing, because I'm not lifting, and I'm thinking, which I used to be a light lifter, not a crazy lifter. And I'm thinking you got to lift to build muscle, but apparently that's not true based on this, because I'm stretching, I'm not lifting at all.
Well, two things there, right? So one is that no, it's not the only way to build muscle. Certainly you don't have to lift hard or strenuous. That's a massive takeaway I need everybody to hear. But what you are doing, Joe, is you're actively moving your muscle. See, when Joe, before we started working together, Joe's been an active guy his entire life. That's why he's able to be on TV at 70, which is very hard and rare for those of you who don't know. That's very difficult for a lot of reasons, as you could imagine. But how you look is certainly a part of it. You got to be good at it, at what you do. But you don't get to stay on TV if you don't take good care of yourself. Right. And for 50 years, that's incredible. But the thing is he wasn't able to work out to the degree that he always had because of the pain he had. And so because of that, he was losing muscle, right? That's one part of it. So even though we're doing a lot of corrective exercises, he's using his muscles a lot more to get into those positions, to go through the stretches, the range of motion, mobility is using a lot of muscle, right? So there's that. But the other thing as to why his muscle utilization is increased. But the other thing is that his protein intake has increased. Yes. One thing just to make sure everybody heard is, well, you didn't hear it, so I want to make sure you do, is in his eating plan, yes, he's eating about 2 times a day, but in our intermittent fast, he's having collagen in the morning, and separately, he's having a protein shake. Yep. So those things are also increasing his protein intake. So Joe, you're down 4.2% body fat,
which is tremendous.
Yeah, that is really good. And so that's a lot. I mean, for 3 weeks, and he's not doing intense exercise, right? So that's important for everybody to hear there. Now, here are some things though that I think this is again important for people to hear, is that we rounded up a little bit. He lost 0.3, a little over 0.3 inches off of his baseline. So that's actually on pace with what we would expect for our spot reduction program. So when you do our spot reduction program for our drop one size, which is what Joe's doing, we know that in order for you to see, a lot of people will say, what is this spot reduction? It sounds like, this sounds too good to be true. Is it BS? Just this, that, the other thing. It's not, but you have to understand it's all like ours is medical grade. It works very well. But that being said, it is a holistic alternative route. It's not a magic trick, right? So you're going to lose every time you come in, but for you to see change in the mirror and how your clothes fit, for most people, you need to get to about a 10% reduction at that one area. And we know that that's about 2 inches off of one spot on your waistline. Yeah. So Joe's early on in this process. So he's slightly under we want to see a 2-inch loss by the end of 12 sessions. He's at a 0.3 loss so far, a quarter of the way through. That being said, there's a few reasons as to why I think that's happening. One is that, your rate of change is going to increase as you move forward. So we'll see what it looks like halfway and revisit it, see if he's at the half-inch mark or a little bit above it. But the other thing that is kind of like this is where there's sacrifice and there's, there's consequences, so to speak. But with us allowing, the pizzas and the pastas, and we're doing the intermittent fasting, so he's able to burn off a lot of those calories. But this is the issue with those types of foods generally, is that they're inflammatory. They are going to create a level of inflammation. So this is we're going to have to live with to some degree, is that to the extent we're having it 4 times a week, there is going to be some inflammation that will slow down the spot reduction. Does that make sense, Joe?
It absolutely does. And I can probably eliminate one more day out of there anyway. It's not the worst thing in the world. In fact, it makes you look forward to when you can have it.
Yeah, and that I'm not super worried about, right? Like I'm happy with your results, but I just think it's important to kind of talk about that whole piece of it, because we need to think about that. Now, it's showing some inflammation, it's showing some inflammation around the hips, which that is interesting, but that could also be kind of where you're storing some of that's not getting processed from, from the carbs. So that's interesting. We're keep an eye on that. However, it's showing an increase of muscle, particularly around the chest and the thigh, the legs, which again is to be expected when we're talking about muscle utilization increase. Those bigger muscle areas are going to that's where you're going to see the increases.
Yeah, I'm using my legs a lot, just pushing myself up because you're on the floor a lot for these exercises. So
yeah,
you're pushing yourself up off the floor to get back up. So I'm definitely doing a lot more things with certain muscle groups that I wouldn't do in a normal day without this workout.
and that is I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because that brings us back to what we were saying before, the muscle increasing. And he says, like, well, I'm not doing serious lifting. And I just to show everybody, you don't, like, if you're having chronic pain, this is kind of what gets a lot of heads, maybe not for women, but particularly for men, a lot of guys out there who are active in their 50s, 60s, 70s, generally speaking, are doing the same workouts they've done since high school in some ways. Not everybody, not saying you were either, Joe, but that is the case I see with a lot of men. So they start to think, well, I can't do bench press anymore. I can't do as much weight anymore. And they start to get, that then leads to less activity, which then drops muscle, which then increases pain. But Joe's talking about getting up and down off the floor. That's using muscle that's functional that he needs to do. And we're adjusting the types of movements that he's doing so that he can continue to work out and not have pain. So that's great. So as we wrap, Joe, any questions for me, any issues, anything you want to go over, anything you want to say to people, so far?
No, I mean, I love the plan. I love the fact that here's a question though. It's interesting. One of the things I used to do every time I worked out was 100 sit-ups, and with legs up, legs apart, hands behind the neck, so I'm not reaching my toes. And I noticed in our workouts there are no sit-ups, but I think I'm getting some of that stomach work done in the way you do the exercises, where you're pulling back. But I'm not actively doing any more sit-ups at all.
Yeah, I'm glad it's a great question. I love that question, because the thing with sit-ups is that they reinforce a movement pattern that too many of us are stuck in every day. So those of you guys who are listening, what I'm doing is sticking out my finger and it kind of bending it forward. That represents our spine. When you're sitting most of the day, that's what your spine looks like. And then I'm going to start moving my finger, and guess what that movement is? That's the movement of a crunch. So it's a spinal flexion. So a lot of us are kind of stuck in somewhat of a spinal flex position throughout the day. When that's the case, we don't want to reinforce it through exercise. What we're doing with Joe is the opposite. We're extending the spine, because when your spine is rounded forward, particularly for men, what happens? Well, your chest gets really tight, your shoulders round forward. What does that do? Cause shoulder pain, cause low back pain. It also, it does a lot to your posture. So what we're looking to do is correct that. And then an important thing to make sure to understand when it comes to doing abs for workouts is that, honestly, unless you're like, 5 pounds or less away from your goal weight and you're lean, then doing ab specific exercises is not a waste of time, but kind of a waste of time, because I'm obviously, like, doing something to better your health is never a bad thing. But like, if you're looking at like how to get the most bang for your buck, that would be on the opposite end of the spectrum. Because you can't spot. Well, this is for people listening though. You can't spot reduce through exercise and diet. So doing that many sit-ups isn't going to decrease your waistline. It will build muscle. The spot reduction that we're doing at Define is what's decreasing his waistline, why his clothes are fitting better in just 3 weeks. But we also want to strengthen the abs. And to do that, I also would not recommend, crunches. So a lot of stuff Joe's doing, he's using his core, but also we have some things in there called dead bugs. And dead bugs is one of the most beneficial exercises to work your core, because unlike a plank, and I think planks are phenomenal, but what do planks do? It gets you in a position where you're on your elbows. What does that do? It puts a lot of stress on the shoulder. If you have shoulder issues, it's not recommended to be doing a lot of planks. So Joe does, so we don't want to reinforce that issue. We're attacking his core a different way through dead bugs and other things. So good stuff there, Joe. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I like the variety. If you can keep me on the similar plan that I'm doing, I'd like to keep it up because I'm getting familiar with them. And I can feel exactly the places they're working in. Well, and I need a lot of places working, but the ones we designated, shoulder especially, lower back especially, biceps, I can feel those specifics, using the lacrosse ball, using the roller, using the bands that I have. I'd like to keep doing those unless you think you need to, figure out a way to adjust them at all.
No, I all that sounds great. I'm glad that you said that because, like I said earlier, a lot of times people want to do something different every time, and at the end of the day, like some movement over no movement is good, but what everybody really needs to hear is that muscle confusion is an overstated concept. You don't need to change the workouts that you're doing all the time. In fact, it's to your disadvantage to do that. What you want to make sure to do every single time you work out is to better your form and to use slightly more resistance. However, the types of exercises you want to get really good at understanding what you're getting out of them and then putting that in, executing on that, and then taking that through a phase of 3 to 6 weeks, then you change up the exercises. So I love that you said that, Joe. We're not going to do that. Just continue to keep me posted, though, if you do find that more than 1 day a week you're not able to get in the full time, and we'll adjust the duration.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to the people listening and watching, my routines, there's 3 different routines. So one day is one set of routines, then second day is a different set of routines, and the third day is also a different set. So when I say that it's the same, they're not, every day is not the same. Every day is tweaked, just at least every 3 days is tweaked just a little bit. Maybe some of the same exercises are in, but they're in a different spot. So it's not exactly every day exactly the same. And I think that's important to mention.
Yeah, that is really important to mention. Thank you for stating that, Joe. And one quick thing before I forgot is that one of the things that Joe said when we first got on here is that he's in his basement, which is colder, which is where he does his workouts. Which is, which is a really, really important thing because a lot of people, like myself too, in Connecticut, New England, we work out in our basements, and it is colder in your basements. So all the more reason to, when you do work out, like, and not Joe's not doing this is not in our program, but one of the biggest mistakes people make is using a treadmill or elliptical to warm up, even a bike. And I think that's a horrible idea because they used to talk about why that's a good idea because they're thinking about your heart and getting your heart rate up and increasing your temperature that way. And that is accurate in terms of increasing your core temperature. The problem is when you go down in a cold basement, especially if for Joe, he just woke up not too long ago. So, or if you're coming from your car, you've been working all day, your joints are cold. You can't work cold joints. You're not in, if you're 15, you can do anything on the planet at any time and you'd be fine physically. As we age, we have to warm up our joints. We have to get synovial fluid to those joints. So with Joe, we're starting off with mobility exercises to send blood and oxygen and nutrients to his joints to prep his body for workout. So you're listening at home, you've got to make sure whatever workout you're doing, you're prepping your body before you put stress on your body. And walking fast, even biking, even though that's less on the joints, think about it. Your ankles, your knees, and your hips are all flexed. And in your flex position, you're moving. Well, what do we do most of the day? Sit. When we sit, what does that mean? Your ankles, knees, and hips are flexed. So we need to extend them to get them ready for exercise. So with that, Joe, proud of you, man. You're killing it. My only feedback to you is please communicate any issues directly through your feedback or sooner. But hey, man, really happy with your results. Let's keep this thing going.
Yeah, we'll do another segment on TV when you're ready, maybe halfway through or whatever. But it's you see my confidence level every week I sign in. I'm 100% confident that it's working. And especially, diet is one thing, but the exercises are really the key to less pain, more flexibility, and in the end, being able to do a lot more of the things that I want to be able to do, especially when this weather breaks and we're back outside. I got 4 yards of wood chips in my backyard that are going to have to be moved at some point in the spring by wheelbarrow. So I got to get there.
You'll be out there like Rocky 3, man. We'll get you going for
I
sure.
got it.
And and so it's great, man. We'll keep it up.
Yep.
And make sure to continue to follow along the journey. When you get a chance to see Joe on TV or in a comment on Facebook, give him some love for all the encouragement. Give him that he's doing great. And also those of you guys listening to this at home, if you finding yourself in a place where you're chronically in pain, or you feel like nothing's working to the extent that it used to, and you're looking for a real change, first know this, that you're closer than you think. I can guarantee anything I know on that. I promise you that. And secondly, we're here to help. So you can go to definewellnesscenter.com. We can get you going in the right way. All right, Joe, I will talk to you soon, my brother.
I'll be in Thursday for that pod treatment.
All right, brother. We'll see you.
Thanks.